Hi everyone, this is Professor Ann. I am providing some additional information and feedback for those of you who have done the assignment that was due on 10/22 on front-end analysis. If you want to revise yours after you do this or listen to this, that would be fine. I'm happy to accept it. So we'll start with the what, and that was to actually do the analysis. So I'm going to give you a moment to read what I have here on the screen. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense to everybody, that you know what the project is, what the goal participation rate was, and what I said I was looking for and what you were supposed to do. If you didn't understand any of that, let me know. So there are 5 steps that you were supposed to follow. The first one was to identify the business requirements. Were any of you able to do that? So this was actually to determine the requirements, not to tell me how, but actually to do it. The how is in the book. So I don't need you to repeat that to me. I need you to tell me what you would have done. So would you have guessed, asked, or guess and ask? You can't know the true need if you don't know the requirements. So let's say that you decided to ask, and I'm going to pretend we're having a conversation. So this would have been reactive. I had approached you. So now your job is to probe and investigate. So let's say that you said to me, "Thanks for asking me to help. Can you tell me why this is a problem for you?" Then I would have responded and said, "Well, it's my job to do this and I look bad. It looks like I'm not doing it." And then you would say, maybe, "Well, you said that you needed more data. How does the extra data help you so that you don't look bad? What does it mean to have that extra data?" And then I would answer, "Well, when we have the data, that gives the instructors feedback on what they could do to improve their courses. And they get feedback on what does work and what doesn't work. And then that allows them to actually improve the courses. And when they improve the courses, that means more students have an opportunity to do well." So that might be what I told you. Now, given that information, what would you say the business requirements were? Step 2 is to specify the desired performance. And again, I'll give you a moment to read what is on the screen. Basically, you have information given. You should know the business need, and from this you should be able to determine the desired performance. All that is needed here is for you to state what the desired performance should be. That's it. At the end of this, I'm going to post an example from a different problem so you can look at how it might have been done. So step 3, that's to specify the current performance. This information was provided. You really shouldn't need anything else to identify it. All that's needed here is to state the actual performance and the stats or figures that back it up. And the stats and the figures are included in the worksheets. So now we go into step 4, and that's to define the gap. And again, I will let you read this. Now in this case, if you didn't have data, you couldn't tell the value. You would know that there is a value, but not how much. So I don't know that unless I gave you more data, you could actually identify how this value would help. For example, what percentage, here's what you would need to know is what percentage, for example, if we have more data, how much does that help make classes better? It's kind of interesting. Sometimes there can be a performance gap, but it's not high enough that it merits doing anything about it. For example, let's say that you found out that by having more data here, it only made the classes 1% better, and that didn't result in anybody with higher graduation rates or anything else. Well, then, even though it did make it better and there was a gap, it might not be worth doing anything about. So that's why you want to know what the gap is, and you want the value of how big that gap is so that you can identify, is it worth solving? And step 5 was to identify the performance gap factors. And again, I will let you read this. If you haven't finished reading and you want to, you can just pause it until you do and then start again. The key here is that nobody can ever identify the correct solutions until you know the root cause. You can figure out, you can think you know what it is, but unless you know the root cause, you don't know really what to do. And if you try to solve it and it wasn't the root cause, it won't really get solved, right? And from the data given in this case, you can't know why there's a performance gap. You would have to figure that out. So that would be your job here, is to figure out, why does this gap exist? So how could you have done that? If you were in a company and somebody had asked you to do this, or if you worked for the school and you were doing it, you could have asked people through interviews or focus groups. So for this assignment, you could have done the same thing. You could have asked each other. You could have asked other students. You could have even used your own experiences just for this assignment. You wouldn't normally do that in the work world. So if you did that, you would know that there are 3 categories that this could fall into if you look in the book. So based on your experience, why do people not fill out these evaluations? And what category do you feel it falls into? So that's all I have here. I want you to go back and do it again and read the example that I give you and see how that was formatted. And that's how you would format it. One of the things to remember that in this course, this is technically, sure, it's a master's program, but this isn't a typical program in that I want you to do papers. At least many of your papers aren't going to be done the way you might have done papers in other courses. This is to actually do it the way you might do it if you were working. So I want an example that you might give your boss or somebody that you were working for. So look at how I formatted the example. Yours doesn't have to be exactly like that. It can be something similar, but it isn't, I don't want you to regurgitate to me what the steps are or what the book says. I want you to actually do the work. So I hope this helps. And I'm going to move on to another assignment now, and I'm looking forward to seeing the results of how this might help you. Bye.